What's up, everybody? So welcome back. I am starting a new format. If you didn't watch my last video, I am doing this more like a podcast where I'm going to talk. I'm not going to edit and splice what I say. You're just going to get real talk from me. That's what I want, because I want to be transparent. I want people to hear what's going on and just hear real things from me instead of something that sounds doctored. So I'll be putting some things on the screen every now and then, but that's really all I'm going to do is just kind of share some things on the screen, but I'm not going to edit what I'm saying. So we're going to get right into it. So we're talking about the NAR lawsuits. Some of you are going to be like, the what now? And you have no idea what I'm talking about. Some of you go, yeah, I think I saw some headlines about it. Some of you may say, yeah, I've really been reading about this. I'm concerned. So I'm going to talk through it. I'm going to do monthly updates because the problem is for us, things are going to keep changing. Nothing is finalized right now. So stuff is going to keep changing. So I will keep you guys up to date every month because the stuff that is changing is going to affect me as a real estate agent, but it's also going to affect you as a consumer, whether you're buying or selling. Stuff is going to change. So I'm here to I can't talk today. I'm here to help you look through all of this to kind of decipher what's going on. So we're going to dig into it. So I'm going to talk about some different things. I'll put some chapters at the bottom if you want to see the different chapters I'm going to be going through. If you want to skip around, that's fine. I'll also put some links in the description. There are some videos. There's a video of a real estate lawyer who actually breaks down the lawsuit a little bit, and it's way more in depth because she's a lawyer. She knows how to read that stuff. So she'll be breaking it down. I've talked to my broker about this. I've talked with many different other industry leaders about this to get more information. I've been waiting to talk about it because stuff keeps changing. And I was like, you know what? I'll just do a video every month. That way people can know what's going on and what's changing. So if you didn't know, there was a lawsuit in Missouri, the Sitzer versus Burnett lawsuit. And it's one of those, I think it's Sitzer versus Burnett. And we know it as Sitzer Burnett. That's all we ever hear. So I think it's Sitzer versus Burnett. But it's been going on, 5-6 years now. It's been going on for a while. So it's not like this just started. The DOJ is involved. So gotta love when the government's involved. But there's also lawyers that have been trying to do this for years, if not decades, trying to get some of these lawsuits to go through. So it's one of those that there was some stuff that happened that they accused. So they accused NAR, National Association of Realtors, and they also accused a bunch of the big brokers throughout the United States. Not every single broker, but they accused a bunch of big ones, and this is in Missouri. So the sellers were saying that so the two biggest things, there's a bunch of different things. And I've got my notes, so I'll be looking at these. But the two biggest things was, they said realtors were conspiring to keep commissions at 6%. So they were saying the brokers, all the big brokerages were conspiring amongst each other to keep commissions high. And then the other thing was they made sellers pay the buyer's agent. So those are the two big accusations. That lawsuit was kind of a mess. Personally, I don't think NAR handled it that well. But then they came to a settlement. So they were going to appeal, and then they decided to come to a settlement. Personally, I think they came to a settlement. I've heard a lot of other people say this. They came to a settlement because tons of other states were starting to get the same lawsuit. Those lawyers were now going to all the other states and starting lawsuits, and so they're trying to cover it. I don't think this is the end of lawsuits, but it's one of those that they are trying to settle this issue, and there will be some changes that affect everyone. So that is kind of what's going on. If you want more information again about the lawsuit itself, look in that video I put in the description below. So there's a lot of headlines. And you may have seen them, whether it been on CNN or MSNBC or Yahoo or whatever. There was tons of places that put it out that you no longer have to pay 6% commissions. You no longer have to pay a buyer's agent. You can negotiate your commissions. Here's the thing. All those statements have always been true. And we go, wait, what do you mean? You don't have to pay 6% commissions. Right. I can't talk. Commissions have always been negotiable. There is no set standard. It's not like certain states have a set standard for all that stuff. There isn't. Commissions have always been negotiable. Always. And people are like, well, I talked to this one real estate agent. They said they wanted this much. Okay. That realtor is telling you they charge this for their services. You don't have to hire them. You can hire somebody else. That's the thing is, like, in my business, I have a set fee that I work for because I know what all my costs are. I know all that different stuff, and I know what I have to work for. And I'm a good real estate agent, so I know what I charge. And that's the thing is, there is a fee for working. People don't work for free. Sorry, they don't. And we got into the part of this problem with the lawsuits because there were agents that were doing things that they shouldn't have been. Listen, every industry has bad apples. Real estate has it too. We have people that are doing things they shouldn't be doing because there are laws that we're supposed to follow certain codes of conduct and different things, and there are people that didn't do that. Okay. Every industry has that, and some bad apples are going to ruin it for everybody else. So, some of the things that, like, I always heard that thankfully I was taught never to say this, but I've heard buyer's agents say, oh, well, I work for free for you as the buyer. And that's not true. You are getting paid from someone. And that's the thing is, the biggest thing that came out of these lawsuits is transparency was needed. Agents weren't explaining things, and that's on agents, like where we weren't explaining things to help people understand what was actually happening. And that's where transparency needs to happen. You need to know what's happening. Like when I sit down with people, I explain now, like, all right, here's how compensation works. Here's all that stuff works. That needs to happen. A lot of times it happened on the listing side, but there are certain things that they maybe didn't cover on the listing side. So now there's going to be full transparency. They're saying, hey, we're going to have to share all this. In a funny note, for us realtors, it's just going to be more paperwork. They're going to have, anytime there's lawsuits on anything and anywhere, right? If you like sign up for stuff, you know how the documents keep getting longer and longer, the contracts for stuff, and you're like, oh my gracious, it's because of lawsuits. Same thing with real estate. Like I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were saying the real estate purchase contract used to be like 3 or 4 pages. Now it's like 10 to 12 pages. It's going to be longer now. And so there's just stuff that's going to be added for liability, all that different things. So that's kind of what's happening with the lawsuit. And I also found it funny because I was reading some stuff where they were talking about, all these brokerages are talking to each other, colluding. And I find it funny because like someone asked me, one of my clients asked me, they said, well, do you talk to other agents about commission? No, we're not allowed to talk about commission. We're not allowed to do that where we're talking back and forth to try and set a number. You can't do that. And that's where, for me, it's always negotiable. Like my broker doesn't tell me what I can set as commission. They don't talk to me about that because that's up to me. I am a business owner. I am a small business owner where I run my own business. I run my own profit and loss statements. I do all that stuff because I am a 1099. I don't, for me, I am a private contractor. That's what a real estate agent is. We are private contractors. So it's one of those that it was kind of funny because a lot of the accusations they came with as a realtor, I was sitting there going, what? What are you talking about? So to me, it's, lawyers are always going to try and make money. And they did in this case because they've been trying for a while. So the DOJ doesn't like that, sellers are paying both sides, all this different stuff. So there's going to be a lot of shakeup. And I'm going to talk through some of that here now. So what's changing? So there was a settlement reached earlier this year with NAR and that lawsuit. The thing I found humorous was they were asking for tons of money. I think it was, if I remember right, all the sellers in Missouri that were in that lawsuit were going to make somewhere between like $5,000 to $10,000, I think. And now with the settlement, they'll make a quarter of that, something like that. So, and the people who make the most money, lawyers. Shocker. But what's changing? So some of the stuff that they're saying is changing is stuff that we already do. So it's like, okay, that's not really changing. So some people have not been doing some of that. And there was a lot of real estate agents that freaked out and were so concerned with this, but some of that was because they weren't doing some of these things maybe, where they weren't explaining everything the way they should have. Okay. And it was a good reminder for me because like for me, I've been going to training classes to make sure I'm up to date on everything, make sure I'm explaining everything to my clients, stuff like that. So it's a good and bad thing. Like it was kind of annoying because it's like, okay, we're being painted as the villains. And listen, were there bad actors? Sure. I'm sure there were, but most of us, no, that wasn't the case. So it's one of those that, that was the hard part. But at the same time, it's going to help the industry because you're going to watch a lot of agents leave the industry because they're not professional agents or they're part-time and they're not really committed to this. You're going to see, because I think in Phoenix, we've got like 45, 50,000 agents in the Valley. It's a lot. That's a lot. So, this happens in a lot of industries where stuff gets changed and then you'll watch a lot of people get out of the industry, but then there's a core that stays. Because in real estate, you have about 80 to 90% of the business being done by 10 to 20% of the realtors. So it's one of those that it's going to cause some shakeup for sure. And, if you're a good real estate agent that has value, you're going to stick around. So the biggest things that are changing. Let's talk about the changes. So there's 2 major changes that are going to happen. So one is in the MLS. Right now, nothing's changed yet. The changes right now are August 17th is when they're proposed to be put in place. We'll see if that happens. As of right now, in the MLS, we can see what the co-broke is, what the seller's broker is offering to the buyer's broker for the buyer's agent and for the buyer. And so we can see that in the MLS right now. That goes away. So we will no longer be able to see what commission is offered, what co-broke is offered to the buyer's agent. You can still offer commission to the buyer's agent. We just can't advertise it in the MLS. So what would happen now is, let's say you do a listing. I'm the listing agent. People are going to call me and say, are you offering a co-broke? And I say yes or no or whatever the seller decided. Because again, it's negotiable. Everything's negotiable in real estate. So do you have to pay your buyer's agent? Nope. You don't have to pay your buyer's agent. You don't have to pay them anything. And there are people right now that aren't. Now, it's not the majority by far, but there are people not offering co-broke right now. Okay, and that's their right. You don't have to pay a buyer's agent. You don't. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, because the other thing that's changing is on the buyer side, you now have to have representation documents signed out. So we have agency documents that everybody signs saying I'm representing you, but then there's something called a buyer broker. That's going to become very common now for everyone to sign. And that's going to be starting in August. I've been doing it since last year. I have everyone sign on buyer broker, because for me, I want you to know what is expected of me and of you. And so I talk about compensation, I talk about representation, I talk about all those different things. And that's what we should be doing. Now, buyer brokers were not required before, but they will be required now. So that's something going forward that's going to happen on the buyer side. And I can talk more about that if you have questions about it, and I'll probably eventually do a video on it as well. So that's the two biggest things. You can't offer commission in MLS. You can still offer commission, just not in the MLS. So we can't advertise it. And then on the buyer side, you're going to have a buyer broker put in place. So those are the two biggest changes, and those are coming in August. Now, there could be more, because, again, nothing's finalized. So they have preliminarily accepted the what's the word I'm looking for? The settlement. They've conditionally approved the settlement, but hasn't been approved yet. So that's not going to be until later this year. So a lot of places are trying to get this stuff in ahead of time. Like our brokers already said, hey, you need to start working on this, which for me, it wasn't a big change because I've already been doing some of that stuff. So it's one of those are going to be the changes. Now, people ask about compensation. Okay, now buyers are freaking out. How am I going to buy a house? I can't afford to pay an agent. Well, here's the thing. As of right now, not much has changed. Now, there are some places that are not offering commission. Okay. But I have already seen in several listings where there was zero co-broke offered, and then a month goes by, and all of a sudden now they're offering co-broke. Because here's the thing you have to understand is the market's going to determine what happens with all of this. 2021, 2020, when it was crazy, guess what? Sellers didn't want to pay a lot of commission, so they didn't, because the market was nuts. Well, guess what? Now when we start swinging the other way, now we're more in a balanced market now, but if it continues to shift more towards a buyer's market, leverage switch, well, guess what? People are going to be more desperate. They're going to be offering. And so that's where the market's going to determine what happens. Because the reality is like right now in the market I'm seeing is if you don't offer co-broke, if you're not paying a buyer's agent, you're at a competitive disadvantage because now there are other people offering it. So maybe they'll go to that one instead of yours. So there's different things with that. And that's where I'll have to keep giving you updates on what's going on, if anything, other things change. But it's one of those that there are good things and bad things from this lawsuit. But for me, the way I look at it is I can't change any of it. I can only change what's going on right now with my business. So I make adjustments, I adapt, I move on. And so that's where I have conversations with people about this because you need to know what's going on. You need to be filled in on what's happening. So, a lot of it right now, I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything in my notes. For us, it's going to be a change. There's a lot of agents still worried about it. For me, I'm just going to deal with it as it comes because for me, I'm just going to keep running my business. I'm going to keep doing what I need to do. Who does this hurt? Who does it help? That's the big question at the end. It definitely helps lawyers because they made lots of money off this. Lots of money. It helps big companies that want to buy houses as rental properties because they're not worried about cash. They already have cash. So it's going to help them. It's going to help buyers who have money. It's going to help the big-time realtors because the big-time realtors in every market are going to continue to run because they have the name recognition. The people it hurts is the people who don't have money. Whether you be an FHA buyer, VA buyer, first-time home buyer, it's going to hurt people like that because they're not going to have as much money. But here's the reality. And for me, this is where the market is going to determine everything. The free market's going to determine everything. Because if the demand isn't there, and people are like, I don't want to pay co-broke, but then they're just not getting any showings, what are you going to do? You're going to change that? And that's where we've already seen some of that. So to me, the free market's going to determine all of this. And that's where, for me, I'm not concerned because the market's going to determine. It's always been that way. Biggest thing to take away, commissions are always negotiable. They always have been. That is not a change. They've always been negotiable. And that's what people have to understand. So it's one of those that if you have more questions on this, if you're thinking about buying and you're worried, or you're thinking about selling and you're worried, let's have a conversation. Because for me, I think the future looks bright. I think there's many opportunities coming. And so for me, I'm looking at this as an opportunity and how I can move forward. And there's many positives from this, and there's ways to do it. And I want to focus on the positives. That's what I want. So if you have questions about this, let's talk. My information's below. Reach out, shoot me a text, give me a call. I'd love to talk with you, set up. Let's sit down, let's talk through stuff. If you have concerns, let's talk through it because I want you to understand what's going on. So I'll bring another one next month. But guys, I appreciate you listening to The Real.